Live.
And welcome back to Beer Fueled Fantasy Football, guys. How's everything going? I hope you guys are all ready for Week 8 here. For some reason, my drops are coming a little quieter than the mics are, but we'll try to get that adjusted here real quick. We are Beer Fueled Fantasy Football. I'm Nick Spartz, as always, joined to my right by Daniel Thury.
At Thury BFF, what's up, guys?
And to my left in the invisible spot chair is Christopher Hopper. We couldn't get the webcam working on the stream for some reason.
I wore my Harry Potter invisibility cloak today.
He's going to be very difficult to see, Cotton.
He looks very fashionable in the visibility cloak. It'd be stunning if you could see it.
Just the voice of God. That's all.
Jesus? Blake?
Yes. Blake.
All right, guys. So on today's episode, we are going to go ahead and recap what happened in Thursday night's matchup between the Texans and the Dolphins, get you guys all the news from the last couple of days, go over all the injuries to get you guys ready for Sunday, and of course, preview every single game that's happening on Sunday, Monday, as we do every Friday. A couple announcements before we get to that, though. If you wanted to follow the show, as always, it's Beer Fueled FF on Twitter, Instagram, and Untappd to get our news, updates, can art, and beer reviews for all of these episodes. If you want to see the show live and get your chance to answer questions before the games, it's a Beer Fueled Fantasy Football on YouTube. And you can go ahead and hit the subscribe button. You'll get notified when we go live. We do it 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and of course Sunday mornings to answer all your questions. It's going to be earlier than normal this week. It'll be 7:45 a.m. Central Time for those on the East Coast.
Jesus Christ.
To answer all your questions before the London kickoff.
Hey, guys, I got a question before we get started.
Asking for a friend?
No, well, kind of, I guess, but it's not fantasy relevant at all.
Okay.
Have you guys heard of something called foot golf?
I saw your Facebook post. Before that, I had not.
Nope.
All right, so it's golf, but played with a soccer ball, and you kick it instead. Giant hole played on a shorter golf course, but you use a soccer ball. And apparently there's one like a mile from my house, so I'm probably going foot golfing tomorrow morning.
That sounds awesome.
Oh, enjoy your foot golf session.
Yeah, I'm going to, but Dan, you'll have to show up down here so we can go play.
Yes.
And probably get kicked off the course.
Probably. Pretty quickly.
All right. A couple ways for you guys to support the show before we went off on our foot golf tangent here. If you can like and comment on all our videos on YouTube, that helps drive visibility. Dropping reviews on iTunes helps drive visibility to the audio podcast. And also, you can DM Beer Fueled FF or Beer Fueled Fantasy Football if you want to directly help out, either by sending beer that we can't get here and you want to have us feature on the show. You can pick up merchandise, hats or shirts. I don't believe any of us are modeling them right now, but we'll go ahead and get you guys pictures if you need those, and can get those sent out anywhere in the United States. I will even be willing to try to do international if you're interested. And lastly, if you just want to support us on Patreon, we appreciate that money there. It helps cover costs of hosting the show, beer, all that stuff that we put into this every single week. If you guys can do that, greatly appreciate it. But as always, it's time before we get into all this madness to preview a beer. And on today's episode, we've got Cherry Gose by the Sour Note Brewing. They're based out of Hammond, Indiana. It's an offshoot from 18th Street Brewing. Apparently, they decided they needed a offshoot brewery that just did Goses. Gose is a sour ale brewed with coriander, sea salt, and cherry. It's unfiltered, sits at a very sessionable 4% ABV.
Oh, yeah.
Indiana, a lot of love these next couple weeks, I think. Or it's going to be like 3 times over a month and a half span that we've had something from 18th Street or their offshoot on.
I have another 18th Street waiting, too, that we need to do.
Another one other than the one you already...
No, it's the one I gave you already, but we'll get it on later.
Yeah, because I think we had Hunter like the week before I left.
Yep, I didn't realize you were going to have that on there before I'd actually already bought the 18th Street one.
Yeah, it happens.
All right.
Hey, one more thing about foot golf before we keep going. You know who would be bad at it? Blair Walsh.
Daniel Carlson. Mason Crosby.
Yeah, there's the tie-in. any kicker Lindsay has owned ever.
There it is.
Sorry, poor Dan Bailey. All right, well, let's hit some news. All right. Coach Bill O'Brien confirmed Will Fuller suffered a torn ACL Week 8 against the Dolphins. He is done for the season.
Mark Kiki.
If Kiki could...
Oh, man.
Sorry,
What?
we are still getting some cutouts. What were you going to say about Kuti?
I said if Kiki Kuti can stay healthy, then that's going to be a very, very good thing for him.
He will be a priority pickup next week if he got dropped in any leagues.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, I just dropped him, and I'm going to have to try to get him back.
Good luck. All right, this happened literally, I believe, right after we recorded on Wednesday, but Bilal Powell got placed on injury reserve with a neck injury.
Yep. Mark Trenton Cannon to replace his role until Elijah McGuire comes back, which could be next week.
Yep, I like Elijah McGuire as a stash and Cannon as a desperation flex this week, which I'll get to when I preview their game later.
But should we talk Isaiah Crowell?
I mean, he's going to be the guy at this point. I think whoever's with him is just kind of the change of pace back.
Yeah.
I just wanted to hear it, that's all.
Okay. Broncos signed quarterback Garrett Grayson up to their off their practice squad, actually. I don't believe it was to their practice squad. He's going to be their quarterback, too, behind
Where is he from?
Keenum. Carolina.
Oh. Okay.
Giants signed Corey Coleman off their practice squad because they lost more receivers.
And
Huh,
then
I
immediately
didn't
gets
e-
cut.
That's where he was?
He's been on 4 teams in the last 8 weeks. And then last note, and this one is just for the amusement factor, Dante Moncrief missed the Jaguars team flight to London due to a passport mishap. I think that means his dumbass left the passport at home, most likely.
Probably.
And they rejoined the team on Friday after catching a commercial flight.
Oh, Jesus.
That's the first thing he's caught all year.
Oh.
He can't even,
He's
can't
actually
even
had
catch up.
From a yardage standpoint, he's had a decent year.
Yeah, well, from a comedy standpoint, the joke doesn't work if I don't spin it that way, so...
All right. Let's go ahead and recap what happened Thursday night before we get into all the injuries.
What the hell happened?
It's got to be Skype messing with the volume here because I've never had to adjust the audio this much to get the drops hearable.
Yeah, sorry, forgot about that. Skype will do auto volume leveling, and there's no way to turn it off. That's why I kind of hate it,
Okay.
because it will auto level what comes out of the mixer board.
We are going to have to figure out a different solution then. Well, sorry for the in-house production meeting. We're good at those. Texans walloped the Dolphins in this one, though. I actually forgot to even check the final score. What was it, 38-23 or something like that?
That sounds
Yeah,
right.
that sounds right.
We got a couple of comments here from the listeners. Colton, I think alluding to Wednesday's episode, he ended up getting a super trade, the one that we kind of talked about. He got Burley, Gale, and Eckler for Kamara, Ingram, and Ebron.
Hopefully, you had another tight end besides Ebron to make giving that up worthwhile. But if you did, but as long as you do, congratulations.
Yeah. And then from Jorge, you got 2 offers right now that I'm wondering about. I give up Julio for, I'm assuming, Delvin Cook and Keenan Allen, or I give up Mahomes for Keenan Allen. I have Cam and Winston as my other QBs. What do y'all think?
Single QB or 2 QB? Because that really makes the difference on the Mahomes one. Because
Yes.
if you have Cam and Winston and you can give up Mahomes for Keenan Allen a single QB league,
You do it.
100%.
Yes.
All day.
That's an insta yes.
Julio for Cook and Keenan Allen, I'm a little more cautious on just because he says single QB. Yep, Mahomes
Yes.
for Keenan Allen. Do it.
Yes, do it.
Pull the trigger right now.
Yes, literally.
You have you're giving up the QB1, but you have QB 5 and 8 the rest of
Yeah,
season.
you're fine.
Yeah, you're okay.
In single QB, that's fine. You'll just play matchups. Colton says Evan Ingram was his Ebron replacement. I don't hate that.
No, if anything
Doyle's
happened-
back. Ebron's probably going to come back down to earth a little bit.
I agree.
All
More
right.
on that later.
Yep. All right. What happened in the Thursday night game?
All right. Well, it was a lot better from a scoring standpoint than I thought it was going to be. It was fucking sloppy
It was-
as shit.
it
The
was
refs were...
It was ugly from a football and a ref
Fuck
standpoint.
the refs, seriously.
The scoring was
Ugh.
entertaining.
All right, we'll start with the Dolphins here. Brock was pretty bad. 21 to 37, 241, no touchdowns, 1 interception. Looks like Tannehill should be back next week, or at least soon enough. So the Brock train is derailing soon. As for the running backs, Gore and Drake, they got about equal touches. Drake finished with 14 touches, 95 total yards, 2 total touchdowns, 1 receiving, 1 rushing, while Gore finished with 13 touches, 58 total yards. Drake has now scored in his 3 of his last 4 games, and then he had the 2 last night on Thursday night. He's obviously out of timeout, but is Drake in that just RB2? You just throw him out there and go?
This didn't look like a good matchup, and he killed it. So, yes. I mean,
question mark?
Yeah, it's the Dolphins, so I'm never 100% confident
fully
in
confident.
anything related to them. But for their upcoming schedule here, they get the Jets, who can be beaten on the ground. Then they get the Packers, whose run defense is absolute dumpster fire
Jets
status.
just got torched by Latavius Murray, so yes.
Then they get the Colts and the Bills, who are okay. Then they get the Dolphins, the Patriots, who you can run on, but you generally are playing catch-up, so that actually probably favors them even more there.
It does, because you look at what Tariq Cohen... I'll talk about this later on, actually, but you look at what Tariq Cohen did, and then I forget who it was the week before that. They've been torched to the air 2 weeks in a row, so...
Now, if you are a Drake owner, you're real sad when you get to the last 2 weeks of the season, though. Week 15 at the Vikings, Week 16 hosting the Jaguars.
Oof.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I'll float them before the deadline in your fantasy league in preparation for a potential fantasy playoff push.
Yeah, try to sell high. You may need to ride them to try to get there, but it's looking ugly when you do.
Yeah. All right. So for Franco, you can just leave him on your bench, probably drop him. The touches tend to be there. It's just that the production isn't, and he doesn't get involved much in the passing game. For the receivers, if it wasn't for Amendola's touchdown pass to Devonta Parker, his day would have been kind of meh. Finished 5 for 43 on 6 targets. So it ended up being okay. We would have liked to see more in a game with this much scoring, but it is what it is. Parker took advantage of a banged-up secondary and a secondary that lost even more pieces. He finished 6 for 134 on 9 targets. This was the most yards he's had in his career, even though it was propelled by a ridiculous a ping-pong match of a football. And I think you can... Maybe they want to trade him after this. I mean, there's been jokes that they're going to use him, have him show out and then move him afterwards. But they don't have any receivers.
Half of them I've heard have been from you.
Yeah, I know. Half. That's nice. And then Jakeem Grant's only one of other note. He finished 4 for 36 on 8 targets. He looks good with the football in his hands, but that's a bit hard to do at times for him.
Especially when Osweiler's missing him.
Well, thankfully he's only there for another potential game. And then Hopper's tight end started the week, Mike Gesicki. He didn't have a great game in terms of his production, but he at least had 5 targets. I think he went 4 for 24. And we've reached a point where with tight ends, 5 targets is now on a watch list because 5 targets is good for them.
He also did his best John Elway helicopter impression.
He just likes to jump a lot.
It was pretty awesome when he got hit, but
yeah.
I was scared there for a minute because he is like at 2 receptions for -1 yard through the first half. And my tight ends... So, not so hot.
Yeah, your start of the weeks have been a little hit and miss in that regard.
On tight ends, my running back start of the week, home run.
Yes. Then we'll move on to the Texans here. Watson was extremely efficient, 16 of 20, 239, 5 touchdown passes for a second straight game of no interceptions, took no sacks. Of course, you don't want to see 20 attempts from your fantasy starting quarterback, but you'll take 4 attempts. You'll take a touchdown per 4 attempts any day. He gets Denver, Washington, and Tennessee up next. The Denver ones are but they're not all great matchups for him.
No, and there's definitely some better pass rushes than we saw to the Dolphins here, and
this is where the concern is that he may be on the ground a lot.
Yeah, that's kind of been what's killed him is when he gets hit a bunch.
Yeah.
So keep an eye on opposing pass rushers.
Yeah. And then as for the running game here, Lamar Miller blew the fuck up for the second straight week of over 100 yards. He had 18 for 133 on the ground. Also scored a touchdown. The Denver matchup up next week is great for him though. So you should roll him out again. And then he gets Washington and Tennessee. Probably won't try to trade him after next week.
Yeah,
Those are two
and-
very good run defenses.
And your trade deadline's probably coming up in the next couple weeks anyway, so this is about the time to start looking at schedules and say, if I'm considering moving this guy, when's the exit window? And for him, it's after next week.
Yep. And then, so you want to go out there and play him next week.
Well, and the other thing to keep in mind there, too, is who do I want to get for him, or because of the volume he gets, is he worth keeping around in case of emergency break glass?
Yeah, and this is always just personal roster evaluations of who's tradable, what am I trying to get, what needs to be fixed, and then you start making those schedule peaks and look at who you're going to try to move when.
Basically, my point is that if you can't move, because he is an okay piece to have around on your bench in case of emergency.
Yep.
Yeah, decent floor guy at worst.
And then Alfred Blue pissed off Miller owners onwards to a 15 for 42 finish on the ground. So I mean, away 15 carries from him.
I don't know that any Miller owner's pissed off right now.
No, but there could have been more. Either way, great game for him. Receivers, Fuller, before tearing his ACL, 5 for 124 and touchdown on 6 targets. And then Hawkins scared a lot of owners, including myself, who won him in a lot of leagues. I think he had 2 receptions at halftime. And then turned it up in the fourth quarter. Finished 6 for 82 and 2 touchdowns on 7 targets, and had the greatest non-play catch in the history of the NFL. And then we've talked about QD with the Fuller news. So if you can, go out there and pick him up, because he should have a lot of value in this offense. And then as for the tight ends here, Jordan Thomas showed up here, 4 for 29 and 2 touchdowns on 4 targets. The Texans tight ends don't normally get involved, at least what we've seen recently. But he looks to be the tight end to own in Houston as with Ryan Griffin out. But I think as a whole, this is kind of just a weird game and just kind of happened to be that way. Because both of his touchdowns were on just extended plays that weren't going his way.
It's been back-to-back weeks where it's been young receivers with very low utilization rates have caught 2 touchdowns against the Dolphins, because the last week was Michael Roberts. So they just can't seem to they forget about
these second-year tight ends or rookie tight ends.
Yeah, I just saw that. I'm like, both of them had like 3 targets, 2 balls, and 2 touchdowns.
And that is it for that game.
All right, it's time to go ahead and talk about in and out. Guys who are going to be either in this week, out, or we need to check back Sunday. Reminder, we go live to talk about all the inactives first thing Sunday morning. It'll be 7:45 a.m. Central Time. Follow us on Beer Fueled Fantasy Football on YouTube if you want to see us there and ask all your Sunday morning questions. Bring coffee. It's going to be an early one. Confirmed in, we've got running back Peyton Barber is going to go with his ankle injury. So Ronald Jones truthers can cry another week, I guess.
Counselor.
Geronimo Allison is active, and he's going to go in this one for sure.
I like him if he plays.
I am starting him.
Yeah.
Yep. And then Jack Doyle, finally back from the hip injury right before the bye week.
That's fine.
And then Ed Dixon is activated, and he will be playing with Nick Vannett, splitting tight end work there in Seattle.
Gross.
Sickening.
All right, for the outs, you've got running back Giovanni Bernard is going to miss another week there and bye next week, so they're hoping to get him back week 10. Darren Sproles, hamstring missing yet another week. They really should have IR'd him, because he could have come back next week if they had IR'd him.
He had like 7 things injured.
Yeah, he was. The only person who was worse was when Ebron had the full lower body injury going on.
Yeah.
Just all of it.
Everything hurts.
Royce Freeman, ankle is going to miss this week. Probably hoping to get him back next week, but it was considered a rough go of him coming back this week. Then Kerryon Johnson owners can rejoice. Theoretic's missing another game with a knee injury.
Woo, RB2.
Also not listed because I think we talked about him Monday as your reasoning here, but Dalvin Cook, just as a reminder.
Yes. I don't think... Was he officially ruled out?
He's out for the next 2 games.
He's out for the next 2 games.
Well, they said that on the news, and then he was not officially ruled out.
There's a pretty good chance.
He was officially ruled out because I looked earlier to see if Rhodes was playing or not, but Cook is officially out.
Okay.
As of today.
I must have missed that on my
as of
constant monitoring of Roto World.
Yeah, it was as of 4 or 5 hours ago. It was a Vikings beat writer.
Okay. On to the wide receivers, where Rashard Higgins is going to miss again. So if you care, Callaway's the wide receiver too there.
No.
It's really Njoku. Jamison Crowder's going to miss another one with his ankle injury.
Sad.
Torrey Smith's missing one with a knee.
Old man Smith.
Yeah.
And that is a tough matchup for Cam, so that does hurt him slightly.
Yep.
Ryan Grant ankle is going to miss yet another week, so thankfully Hilton's back.
Chester Rogers. Ooh.
Who's also banged up, but he's going to go.
Ooh.
And then, unfortunately for me, in a really deep league, James O'Shaughnessy didn't even make the trip to London, so he's out.
Who else? Niles Paul? Who else do they have?
Niles Paul's an IR, isn't he?
Niles Paul is
With
Yeah.
ASJ.
is on IR too.
Didn't they sign somebody?
It was somebody I didn't even know.
Where's
their name.
Mercedes Lewis at?
Packers.
Oh, God damn it.
I'll pull up the depth chart real quick.
And then Eric Swope is going to miss with a knee, so that does help Ebron with Swope leaving when Doyle's coming back.
And Doyle.
All right, for your check back Sundays, running back Chris Thompson, ribs and knee. They expect he's going to go, but this is definitely one to monitor.
Okay.
Marlon Mack, ankle, didn't practice Thursday, got in a full session on Friday. It's expected he will play, but
That's good news.
keep an eye on that.
Full FP. It's good.
It's a Monday night game for these next two, but LaShawn McCoy is still not fully cleared the concussion protocol, and Chris Ivory is dealing with a hamstring injury.
McCoy, I don't. If you haven't been cleared by now, I don't think it looks
So.
too good for him.
They get another practice tomorrow. We'll get you guys an update on these two backs Sunday morning. Check in with us then.
Jacksonville tight ends, by the way. You've got something called a David Greenidge and Blake Bell.
I've heard of Blake
I've
Bell.
heard of Blake Bell.
That's because he's the one that they signed that we talked about 2 weeks ago.
Yes.
Matt Breida is still dealing with his ankle issue. If history is any indication, he will play, but no guarantees he finishes the game.
Never a guarantee.
And then this is also Monday night. Sony Michel knee is not been ruled out, but is expected he will be.
Yeah, I don't expect him to play.
Should be strictly James White with a very slight dash of Kenjon Barner in this game.
With a slight dash of Barner.
For wide receivers, Paul Richardson is going to try to tough it out. I think he probably goes with an okay matchup against the Giants. Robbie Anderson, ankle is doubtful, so don't expect him to go, which means the top three receivers are out for the Jets.
Who would they play?
The Bears.
Oof, love the Bears defense this week, that's for sure.
Chris Herndon, ladies and gentlemen.
Let's go.
I
I
will-
got him going in a league this year.
I will get to him in a bit. Randall Cobb, hamstring injury. They think he's going to go, but he's less likely than Allison, who's been confirmed to be in.
Okay.
Pierre Garçon knee is doubtful, so expect a big helping of Trent Taylor, which I will also get to later. And then Rob Gronkowski is still dealing with back and ankle issues, so keep a close eye on him tomorrow and Sunday morning.
All right, we got some questions.
Question time.
Colton, Murray or AP in PPR? He's got AP in there if Thompson is a no-go. AP over Murray. I don't think it matters if Thompson plays or not.
I don't care if Thompson is there or not. I want AP.
I agree.
And he also asks, I might be able to get Gronk for Eckler. Would you? I think Gordon was just held out a week before the bye for longer rest period, blah, blah, blah.
I mean, yes.
Gronk for Eckler?
Yes.
If you can get Gronk for Eckler.
Especially when you just said that Ingram was your tight end. I think Gronk will have a much better second half of the season.
Yeah.
All right, that all we got?
Then he says for the AP Murray question, he also has Geronimo Allison. That's the better play because Cobb could be out.
In full PPR?
So it'll be Allison over AP in full PPR.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Upside, yeah. I think Flores will be AP.
Yeah, it depends on what you need, but I mean, Giants don't have
I think I actually made that decision in a league.
Giants don't have
there
a
you go.
terrible run defense either, so it's not amazing, but it's not
No.
terrible. They mostly hold the Falcons.
I don't
in
really
check.
like it either, but sometimes you got to follow the touches too.
All right. Well, if that's all we got for questions for now, let's go ahead and preview Week 8.
Weekly preview.
All right, I wrote Week 7 preview here, but it is Week 8. Starting off, going back to London for Wembley one last time this season. Thankfully, it is the last time. Eagles are going up against the Jaguars, two teams who were in the Final Four last season. Eagles are favored by 3.5. It's a 42-point over-under, so not the offensive power game we were hoping for to get us started first thing in the morning. Hopper, how many players are going to be startable in this defensive slugfest?
I actually like the Eagles side a lot more than the Jags, but I think there's going to be more people you can start in this game than you think. Starting with the Eagles, Carson Wentz, you're obviously going to start him. The Jags are kind of in a lull on defense. They're barely above league average against quarterbacks the last 3 weeks, and Wentz has been very... As for the running backs, Smallwood I like a little bit more than right at league average during this downstretch, but they've had two 100-yard rushers over the last 2 weeks. Now it is Wembley. Sometimes the turf monster plays a wreaks a little havoc here. Couldn't find words; those are hard. But I like both as flex plays. And then for Jeffrey and Aguilar, I don't really like Jeffrey much this week. Even during the downstretch for the Jags and the hot streak that Jeffrey's been on, the passing defense ones haven't really been the issue. It's been more slot wide receivers, the secondary guys that have been absolutely torching them. So I'm on the Nelson Aguilar train a bit more here. And then as for Zach Ertz, you start your studs.
Mm-hmm.
Should be a fine play. Any other questions there?
The last thing you said there was Eagles defense should be a fine play.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I got them going in a few places.
Yep. On to the Jaguars. Blake Bortles at Wembley in 4 games has 8 touchdowns to only 2 picks, 230 yards a game. So it could be worse if you need a streamer there. Because it's London. He always seems to play well in London.
And London games just are always a bit odd.
Yes.
They don't make sense. So everything I'm saying here is probably wrong. As for Yeldon and Hyde, I'm probably sitting them both. The Eagles' defense is only laying 12.5 points a game on the season, and you don't really know what that workload or what that split's going to look like coming off the ball. So I kind of want to steer clear of that backfield. Is that a fair assessment?
I want nothing to do with Yeldon or Hyde this week.
Nope.
In fact, I want nothing to do with them when they come back from the bye either when Fournette's with them.
Yeah, me either. As for the wide receivers, I think D.D. Westbrook's a perfectly okay dart throw here. Wide receiver 3 type of player. The Eagles are giving up over 27 points a game to wide receivers. Dante Moncrief also falls kind of into that same boat. As they've kind of been the 2 most consistent Jaguars wide receivers. So if you need somebody to start to fill in bye weeks or you're in a 3 wide receiver league, I don't hate either of those. I think Westbrook, as per the usual, has a little bit more upside. And then I had O'Shaughnessy listed, and with the note, it's London and Bortles. Fuck it, why not? So
Blake Bell.
If you believe in David Greenidge or Blake Bell, go for it. But I don't.
I agree with you on that. So the fireworks are not starting in these first couple games here that we're going to preview. Up next for the...
It's like snakes and sparklers.
Yes. We're going to go off and get some of those little snap poppers you can throw at people and go to the Ravens and Panthers game. Ravens are favored by 2 on the road. 44-point over-under on this one. And for the Ravens, there's no real ceiling for Flacco with against the Panthers. 5 of 6 quarterbacks have scored under 20 fantasy points. But the average performance has been 280 yards and 2 touchdowns over the last 4 games. So there's some decent floor there. Panthers can be beat deep. And he's a decent 2 quarterback floor play, but probably not good enough to be a 1 quarterback streamer consideration.
You never trust Flacco in 1 QB streaming.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be a crazy good matchup to think about it. As far as the run game, it's been bad. 113 total yards per game allowed by the Panthers, and just 4 total touchdowns allowed in 6 games on the season makes any Ravens back a real tough play. Collins was Hopper's sit of the week for that reason. He's been under 70 total yards in all but 1 game this season. So running back 3 at best is what I've got him at this week. And then Allen is firmly glued to your bench.
Yes.
I actually dropped him in a few places.
You can probably drop him by now.
So the Panthers are weird. They literally have only had 1 receiver, and it's always 1, get over 10 points against them over every single week. So it's always 1 gets over 10 and nobody else does. So if you're betting on 1, you got to bet on John Brown. He's been the most consistent receiver for him this season. I've got him as a low wide receiver 2 in this matchup. Crabtree's the next most likely to do it. I've got him as a low wide receiver 3, and then Snead, you're just basically hoping for PPR volume. And as a reminder, this isn't half PPR scoring in case anyone is new to listening to the show.
Yep.
Skip the Ravens tight ends. You don't want to deal with any situation where it's 4 people fighting for targets. And then I would definitely lower expectations for the Ravens defense this week. In 6 games, the Cam has only been sacked 10 times, and they only have 7 total turnovers in those 6 games, and they're above average for scoring. So it's a situation where there's not a ton of floor, and the Panthers have enough ability to score enough points to make them a low defensive play.
Yeah, I have some teams going over them, but this is still, the Ravens are an elite defense that it took the best offense, arguably one of the best offensive football, to put them at a floor game.
Yeah, it's just saying they're not
Yeah.
a top 3 to 5
Yeah.
play this week. They're probably more like 8.
I'm
I was
streaming
gonna
yards all
say,
over
I think
them.
I've got them between 6 and 8. I don't remember specifically, but I think they're in that range for me.
Onto the Panther side, where Cam has actually been far and away most consistent of his career so far, and he's actually on pace for his 3rd best fantasy season ever through 6 games. And he's still got some of his best matchups over the second half of the season left. He still has the Falcons one more time. He's got 2 more matchups. He's got both matchups against the Buccaneers, gets the Steelers. So we could be looking at some real nice second half Cam. This is not one of those matchups, though.
Sit him this week if you can.
I've got him as my QB 12, so like literally the last starter. You may be in situations where you have to start him, but if you can go get Winston, go get Trubisky, I would much rather start those guys over Cam this week.
Agreed.
McCaffrey does not score touchdowns. And in a game where the running back did not score a touchdown against the Ravens, the most points put up in half PPR is 9.2, and that was Joe Mixon on 22 touches. So if you're playing McCaffrey, you're basically hoping for a floor day in like 70 or 80 yards with like 8 catches. He's realistically a running back 2 this week, not a running back 1.
He's always an RB2. I think most weeks now.
On the flip side, Funchess actually isn't a horrible play. Jimmy Smith may not go, and he has established himself as the wide receiver 1 of this offense. He has 3 touchdowns in the last 4 games. He's been getting the majority of targets. And wide receiver 1s are averaging 55 yards and a touchdown over the last 6 weeks against the Ravens. So it's not a real confident play, but he is a better play than I expected when I statted it.
Thank God AJ Green and his 3 touchdowns in week 2 can propel that up.
That did come into
that
that did come into play there, but other players did have decent yardage
I
games
know.
too, even without the touchdown.
No.
Ravens have allowed 60 yards plus yards or a touchdown to tight ends in 3 of their last 4. So Olsen is a decent play here. The snap percentage has been there, and I expect the targets to start following here soon. He's been over 95% snaps the last 2 weeks. It's not a great matchup, but if you're desperate for tight end, he is a back-end tight end 1 for you. And for the last 4 games, Ravens still have just 5 sacks and 4 turnovers in that stretch. So once again, even though Panthers are generally regarded as a pretty good defense, avoid them too. There's very little floor here.
Before we jump to mine, we have some listener comments here. Colton, anyone ever call you guys the great value version of the fantasy footballers? Hopper equals Jason, Dan equals Mike, and Nick equals Andy.
Well, the Nick Andy comparison has definitely been made.
That is
Yeah,
always been there.
usually Dan and I are flipped, but I'll take it. We've gotten the comparisons before, but not quite like that. But I like it.
Yeah,
I like the store brand reference.
that's awesome.
The great value.
And then we actually have some actual questions outside of the fantastic comments here. Patriots or Colts defense this week?
Ooh, I may need to check. my
Patriots
ranking.
for sure. They get the Bills.
Yeah,
Yeah, the Colts have the Raiders with
Oh,
nobody.
God damn it. I mean, can you play both?
Is it a 2 defense league?
I still like Patriots, though.
You know what? I'm going Colts. They've been a bit more consistent throughout the season, and actually really haven't been terrible with a team that literally has no weapons.
It is the Patriots for me. They're my 1. So Colts are my 5.
They're both good plays, though. Either way.
Yes.
And then a couple questions from Project Badass here. Big Ben or Trubisky?
This
Ben.
week, I think it's Trubisky.
Ben's at home.
Nope. I got Roethlisberger by 1 spot.
Yeah, I like Big Ben. this
Yeah,
week.
I got Ben ahead of Trubisky.
And then one other question. Elshon Jeffrey or Josh Gordon in a standard scoring league?
Alshon.
Yeah.
I gotta go.
That's tough,
I
though.
gotta go with my start of the week. I'm going Josh Gordon.
I'm gonna lean Alshon.
I just think that I'll talk about this a little bit later because I have the Patriots game, but I think the game script for Alshon's going to be a bit better, and he's just a little bit better down in the red zone, better chance at giving you the touchdown.
I trust Alshon just a little bit more, but yeah. All right, those are the questions. Moving on to my game.
Buccaneers are going to Cincinnati to play the Bengals. Bengals favored by 4.5 at home. First 50+ over under this week at 54.5.
Take the over. All right, starting with the Bucs. Jameis Winston is Nick's start of the week. Bengals coming into this week having the 5th worst defense against quarterbacks, giving up 22.46 points per game, giving up 15 touchdowns and 310 yards per game in that stretch. Winston is a great play this week. The running back game is a mess. Barber is confirmed to be playing, so this just messes the Mercosines up even more. I would avoid them all. We don't know how healthy Barber really is, and Jones is starting to eat into his work. Gross. As for the receivers, Mike Evans is an auto start, and even much so with the bye weeks that we're in right now. And Godwin and Jackson are both fine flex plays this week. This game should see a fair amount of scoring, thus making both these teams throw more. Bengals have also given up big days to both the wide receiver 2s and 3s. O.J. Howard is clearly the tight end 1 in this offense, starting with confidence. Bengals are giving up the 5th most points to the position on the season. As for the Bengals, Dalton gets a very friendly matchup as a bounce-back game. Bucks are still the worst team against quarterbacks, and their defense is taking a beating with injuries mounting up. Stream Dalton with lots of confidence. Mixon and AJ Green are both studs and should be started with zero concern. Tyler Boyd, it's been a little bit boom bust lately, but this is a good matchup and far too good to ignore. Starting with confidence as well. And then CJ Uzomah is another good play this week. The Bucks are giving up the most points to tight ends this season. So if you need a tight end stream this week, he is another good play if he's out there. And then given Winston's issues with turnovers and taking sacks, the Bengals could be a sneaky boom bust play this week. Bucks have also been friendly against these defenses over the last 4 weeks, giving up 11 points to defenses per game.
I'm not sure I'm quite that much of a risk taker with how bad the Bengals defense has been.
That's why I said it could be a sneaky boom bust play this week. You're taking a chance with these bye weeks, and after we saw Thursday night, you are looking for more of a boom play. This Bengals defense could actually give them that.
All right, that all you got on that game?
That's it.
All right, it's going to be Nick heavy through the noon games here, and then I basically disappear afterward. Broncos going to Kansas City to play the Chiefs. Chiefs favored by 10 at home, 53.5 point over/under. And this is a rematch because they played each other just 4 weeks ago.
53. Take Chiefs in the over.
Yeah.
Let's go.
On the Broncos side, Keenum played these Chiefs 4 weeks ago. His stat line was 245 yards, 0 touchdowns, and a pick on 33 attempts. Now he goes on the road to Kansas City, so he's a desperation streaming option if nothing better is available, but I would much rather go get somebody like Mayfield in this matchup.
Yeah.
Lindsey, 79 total yards and a touchdown in week 4 on just 14 touches. No Freeman in this matchup, so Lindsey is a fringe running back 1 this week. I've got him as my running back 12. I should easily see 15-plus touches in this matchup, and then Booker in PPR leagues especially is a solid play because there should be another 10-ish touches available for him as well if you're in a deeper league or just blown up by bye weeks.
Yeah.
All 3 receivers struggled in their last matchup. Not a single one of them broke 60 yards, but the last couple weeks they have been more effective, Sanders especially. Sanders is a fringe wide receiver 1. I expect a better game out of him this week. And then Sutton and Thomas are both wide receiver 3s with upside. And then if you're super desperate in a deep or 2 tight end league, Hireman actually went off for 4 for 57 last time they played the Chiefs, and Chiefs have allowed 4 tight ends to break 10 fantasy points so far this year. They were actually one of the worst in the league against the tight end position. So this is I've got nothing. Hireman's a name to look at, and I'll give you one other name here in a little bit later that has already been previewed today. And then the defense is going to be digging its way to China with how negative it goes in this matchup. On to the Chiefs side. Mahomes is still a top 6 play here, but he went for 304, 1 passing, 1 rushing last time the 2 teams played. It was his second worst game of the year, the worst one being against the Jaguars. So expect him to be closer to a league average performance here as opposed to his normal average Mahomes performance, which is a difference of like 16 points. Hunt gave you 175 yards and a touchdown 4 weeks ago. Expect him to repeat here, and he's my running back 2 this week. Last matchup, though, Watkins got hurt early, gave you a goose egg, and Hill went 9 for 54, so I'm still treating Hill as a mid-wide receiver 1. Watkins is a wide receiver 3 with upside. He was Hopper's start of the week. So I expect better performances here than we saw at Mile High, but there's a little reason to be cautious about it.
Well, with Watkins getting hurt, they probably flipped the way they wanted to use Hill.
It may have. Kelsey, my tight end 1 easily here. He went 7, 78, and 1 last time these 2 teams played, and it's just a matchup that you can exploit against the Broncos, and they'll continue doing so. And then for over the last 5 weeks, Keenum has been sacked at least 2 times in every single game. He's thrown exactly 1 pick in every single game, and the Broncos, in most matchups, have really struggled to score points. The Chiefs are a solid floor defense play here in this matchup at home.
All right, before we jump into Hopper's game, we have another question from Project Badass again. Chubb or Cohen? I'm assuming standard scoring.
If it's standard scoring,
I'm still saying Cohen.
I think if it's standard scoring, I think I'm actually going Chubb. Yeah, I've got in half PPR, I've got them 1 rank apart. So in standard, I would go Chubb.
Yeah.
In half or full point PPR, I'm going Cohen.
I'm leaning Cohen here, upside play.
And then Nick asked, Wednesday asked you guys about spending all of my 25% fab on Latavius, which I mentioned he was dropped, not sitting on the waiver wire. And then it's a super deep 12-team keeper league. He ended up going from 75% of someone's fab who had Lynch, Hyde, and Michelle as their main running back, so he just needed a warm body.
Yeah.
Holy crap.
I mean,
well,
the guy's trying to pay for a couple wins. Unfortunately for him, after the Jets game, the Vikes are running. The defenses they play up against the run are pretty fucking good, including the Saints, the number 1 in yards per carry allowed. So,
yeah. But, I mean, if you need a warm body, you need a warm body.
Yeah.
What people say at 3 a.m., I guess.
Ooh.
Colton wants to ask for a friend here. Better Halloween costume. Bender from Futurama or wacky, waving, inflatable, flailing arm tube man? I think it's got to be Bender.
I don't know.
I think it's Bender.
Yeah, it's Bender. It's always Bender.
So I do like it saying wacky, waving, inflatable, flailing arm tube
I'm
man.
really glad you said that. 'Cause I wasn't about to say that shit. All right, that's it.
Waving inflatable arm?
Of course, it's cutting out when he's trying to say it.
Sounds like Dan saying.
No, it didn't cut out. That was actually my voice. I had to stop and think for a second.
All right, well, Hopper, you got the Browns versus the Steelers next in Pittsburgh. Steelers favored by 8, 49-point over-under. Can the Browns keep up with the Steelers on the road in this matchup?
I think they can keep it close enough, but I don't think it's going to be that close, if you get what I'm saying.
I think I get what you're saying.
Yeah. Anyway, let's start with the Browns. Baker Mayfield. The Steelers have been better against the pass as of late, allowing just 19 points to Matt Ryan and Andy Dalton. So don't expect a blow up from Baker Mayfield, but he has been over 23 points in 3 of his past 4 starts, which makes him an okay streaming option. I don't hate Baker this week. It's just not as good as it would have been a couple weeks ago. As for the running game, Chubb could be a solid volume start. However, you're hoping for a touchdown. Pittsburgh is only allowing 66 yards a game to running backs and has given up just 3 rush touchdowns all season. Hence why I said Tariq Cohen on the last question. And Johnson isn't getting nearly enough volume to be worth much. So this is a running game that I'm typically kind of trying to stay away from. With Chubb, it's a volume play, so you're kind of hoping that he falls into the end zone there, which hasn't happened for a lot of people against the Steelers. As for the passing game, Jarvis Landry and David Njoku, they're going to have to throw, and those are the two that are going to get your volume. As far as Njoku goes, Pittsburgh's allowing the 4th most points to tight ends and over 50 yards if 5 or more catches happen. So I don't expect a repeat of his bad week 1 performance. He's second fiddle to Landry, but I think both of them are going to be viable plays, and I actually like Njoku a lot this week.
Yep, I got him going everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
So that's it for them. The Steelers is going to be short. You're going to start all of them. Cleveland's giving up 28.4 points to wide receivers. They're not necessarily great against tight ends either. And the Steelers are at home. So it's just all systems go for Steelers.
So start Ben, start Brown, Juju, Connor, maybe even McDonald.
You can get cute with McDonald.
You can get cute.
All right, that all you got on that game?
Yep.
All right. Next, we're going to Detroit for the Seahawks, visiting the Lions. Lions are favored by 3 at home, 49.5 over-under in this one. Starting with the Seahawks, Wilson is a back-end QB1 against what started off as a solid pass defense early in the year, but they just let Tannehill go off for 239, 2-0, and that was the week after they let Aaron Rodgers throw for 3 second-half touchdowns against him. So this should have been an easy matchup against, I'm sorry, it wasn't Tannehill, it was to Osweiler even. It was even worse. I don't know why I typed Tannehill. Wilson has also had back-to-back nice games against the Rams and Raiders, so if you're desperate, he looks like he's starting to run a little bit again, and he's got Baldwin back. So if you need him as a QB1 this week, he's there as a back-end one for you. Lions have allowed 12-plus fantasy points to an opposing running back in all but one game, and that was against the Packers, whose running game basically doesn't exist, so they don't count. But there are 2 concerns I have before endorsing Carson as a running back 2 this week. One, the workload split in the Raiders game, even kind of early in the game, started getting a little weird with Carson, Davis, and Penny all seeing touches in the first half when the game was at least somewhat in doubt. And then the Lions went and traded for Snacks Harrison, who's a top 5 run-stopping defensive tackle who is going to play this week. So Carson's a lower running back, too, and what should have been, if it hadn't been for the Snacks trade and his touches weren't in question, he would have been a probably top 14, 15 type play heading into this matchup. So if possible, I would try to avoid it just because there's some questions here about how this is going to turn out, and there's a lot of uncertainty. But if you're desperate, he's a low-end running back 2 for you. Skip Davis and Penny until we see how this shakes out better. The receivers that have done the best against the Lions, it's slot receivers. It doesn't appear Slay ever moves into the slot to shadow their corners. 5 slot receivers this year have already topped 50 yards receiving. Multiple have scored touchdowns, and none of them are even close to the level that Baldwin is coming into this game. So Baldwin's a solid wide receiver 2 this week, due to drawing favorable coverage. Lockett probably gets the Slay ride outside because he's easily their best outside receiver. I got him as a wide receiver 4. I would bench him if at all possible. With the return of Ed Dixon, him and Vanette are both on timeout until we see one of them dominate the snaps and actually get enough looks to be startable. So, sorry, Hopper.
That's all right.
And then since
Vanette will dominate, and then I can rejoice.
By week 10, you'll be celebrating. And then since week 1, the Lions have been sacked 10 times and have just 2 turnovers in those 5 games. This is a terrible streaming option for the Seahawks defense that has overperformed so far this season, but Stafford just has not been turning the ball over at all. As for the Lions, Stafford should be benched this week. Seahawks right now have massively overperformed what we thought they were going to be this season. They're number 2 in the NFL in fantasy points allowed to opposing quarterbacks. In the last 5 games, they've only allowed 5 total touchdowns to opposing quarterbacks. So adjust accordingly. We adjust to new information. We were wrong about how bad this defense was going to be. Stafford is not a good play this week. On the flip side, 5 backs have broken 70 rushing yards in the season against the Seahawks. So if I'm playing anybody against them, my favorite play is for sure Kerryon Johnson, who's had 14-plus touches and 70-plus rushing yards in back-to-back games. No Theo Riddick to steal his pass-catching work. He'll be a back-end running back 1 in a tough bye week for running backs. On average, opposing wide receivers are totaling just 144 yards and 1 touchdown a game against the Seahawks this year, which is terrible. It is bottom 5 in the NFL. If I'm picking one, though, it's going to be Golden Tate. The 2 times that a receiver has roasted them has been out of the slot. And it was Emmanuel Sanders and Cooper Kupp. Easily the 2 highest scoring games, 18 and 24 points respectively out of the slot against this defense. Tate can be treated as a wide receiver 2. Galladay is a low wide receiver 3. And Jones barely made my rankings this week. He's a boom-bust wide receiver 4. Don't chase Michael Roberts to catch 2 touchdown day against the Dolphins. They apparently suck against young tight ends, as we saw with Jordan Thomas last night. And after being sacked 12 times in the first 2 games, Russell Wilson's been sacked just 7 times in the last 4. So Lions are also not a great option at defense here for you.
Because he's running again.
He is running again, and he's avoiding pressure.
Yep.
And the offensive line in general has been playing better. All right, that's all I got on that game. 2 left here for the noon. We're going to go to Redskins versus the Giants in New Jersey. Redskins favored by 1 on the road, 42.5 point over-under for Dan.
But before we do, Colton, again, another question. As the commissioner, I'm always looking to make my league better. What's a few things you'd recommend to implement into my league or to start second one with them? Thanks.
If you can live draft, 100% recommend that. It's a blast. It's a great way to start a league and get everyone talking, especially when not everyone knows each other coming into the draft. Other things I recommend, we're a big fan of double flexes. I'm really growing on tight end premium as a scoring option. Super flex is another thing I'm getting more interested in enjoying. Anything else that you guys...
If you're looking for scoring changes, my boss at my work here does a thing for his league where he has people pick out rivals during the draft, and during rival week, which would be when you play these teams, there's side bets that go along with it. So try to encourage people trying to create rivalries. You can use that as a benefit to gain more, a lot more interaction. You can get a little bit more money involved. So people who may even be out of it, if you make the rivalry late into the season, you can make games that are still actually worth it. You can do some fun things with that, and then obviously, you can haze the worst team in the league. Do something fun with that.
Yeah, and just if you have the time, I haven't had time to do this in any of my leagues right now. Is if you can do power rankings every week, great thing to do.
Yeah, it's a fun idea, but then we started the show, and now we're in 20 different leagues apiece. So
yeah, too much.
Wasn't gonna happen.
Anything else from you, Hopper?
Not really. The one thing I'm in this year that I kind of like is the wide receiver tight end flex spot. Depending on an option if you have a top tier, but you can also play just wide receiver. And then The only other thing I would recommend is put an IDP slot in or something like that to spice it up a little bit. That's not a bad idea either. I've gotten into a couple more IDP leagues over the last few years, and it's pretty fun.
All right. Let's go ahead and jump on to Redskins Giants.
Redskins are going to be pretty easy to talk about. There's not a lot to like about this offense right now. AP is probably your only good start and maybe most trusted start. Can't really play Alex Smith with all the injuries to his receiving core. Chris Thompson does help, but you can't really push the ball downfield with a running back out of the backfield. And just with his overall lack of volume there as well. You may have to play Reed, just given the tight end depth at this point, but you're not feeling great about it. And then the other thing I do like is the defense this week. They're generating a turnover in every game this season, 5 over the last 2 games. And outside of the Saints blow-up game, no opponent has gone for more than 21 points against them. So this defense not only provides you a decent floor with low points allowed, but they also generate sacks and turnovers. And Eli Manning loves to do both.
Mm-hmm.
As for the Giants here, and speaking of Eli Manning, the Redskins actually have been pretty bad against quarterbacks over these past 4 games. But a lot of that is due to 2 QB rushing touchdowns and playing against Dak and Cam, who have racked up rushing yards. And we know Eli Manning is not going to run for 80 total rushing yards.
Can't even do a QB sneak.
So don't like that. And the other matchup they played against was Drew Brees in his record-setting night. So on paper, in terms of what we look at, it's good on paper. I'm not playing Eli this week. I don't trust them. I don't trust them to do what they've been bad against these last few weeks. Barkley and Odell are obviously auto starts here. And then as for Sterling Shepard, Traquan Smith is over the Redskins past three games, Traquan Smith is the only receiver to go over 100 yards. But 6 receivers have gone over 70 yards. So I like Shepard as a mid-flex play this week. The targets have been there this season. He's averaging just over 7 a game. So play him hopefully for that 6-7 or the 5-6 reception floor. And then with Ingram, a lot like Reed, you may have to play him just given the lack of and the landscape of tight ends here. But you're not feeling great about it.
All right. Well, let's get to the last game before we hit the beer review, which is Jets going into Chicago to play the Bears. Bears favored by 7.5 at home, 45-point over-under. The Jets side, Darnold is only a consideration in 2 quarterback leagues, but it's not because of how good the Bears' defense has been against the pass the last couple weeks. Brady and Osweiler both went for 270+, had 3 touchdowns against the Bears the last couple weeks, and the just deep passing game has just not been there, and the pass rush has not been getting home. The concern for Darnold, though, is he has no Enunwa, no Pryor, and likely no Anderson. So he's just got nobody to throw to. Doesn't have enough weapons to consider starting him.
Find somebody else in 2 QB leagues.
After starting as a top 3 run defense this year, though, Bears have come back kind of down to earth here. They've allowed nice games out of Gore, Drake, and White the last 2 weeks. Powell's out, so Crowell should see the majority of the carries. He looks to be a low running back 2 off volume and opportunity. And then if you're really desperate, a low running back 3 PPR play would be Cannon. I wouldn't want him in standard, probably not even in half, but full point PPR, he probably should get 5 to 6 catches and help bail his day out.
Yeah, hopefully.
If the Jets had a healthy receiver, I'd love them here, since a wide receiver has broken 100+ yards against the Bears in 3 straight weeks with Jackson, Wilson, and Gordon. So if Anderson goes, he's kind of a boom-bust wide receiver 3. I'm concerned about him re-injuring the ankle, though, because it is a decently severe sprain. Kurst is a PPR wide receiver 4, but he goose-egged you last week, so it's tough to trust.
Yeah.
The interesting one, though, is Chris Herndon the 4th. If you're really desperate, Bears have been awful against most tight ends this year with 4 touchdowns allowed in the last 5 games to the tight end position. And Herndon almost scored 2 touchdowns last week. He got you 1 and barely missed the second. So not a bad play if you're super desperate at tight end right now, which a lot of people are. And then with Trout Trubisky's been playing, you do not even consider starting the Jets' banged-up defense. On the Bears side, 327 yards and 2.5 touchdowns has been the average performance over the last 4 weeks against the Jets. And Trubisky, over his last 3 games, is the highest scoring quarterback since any 3-game stretch in 2012. He's a QB1. He's a borderline must-start play against a very banged-up Jets secondary with no screen and likely no Trumaine Johnson. Are you editing something?
There you go. Something happened.
Could you hear me typing?
Oh, I could see Dan editing something. In the last 5 weeks, Jets are giving up 146 total yards to running backs per game with a floor of 80 to the running back one and 6 total touchdowns in 5 games. Cohen basically is not possible to sit right now unless you're just stacked in a standard league. He's a high running back 2 in this matchup, and then Howard's even a low running back 2 floor play. He's getting his snap shares dropping, but this is a team you can run against. Robinson is a question mark on Sunday, so if he goes, probably a low wide receiver 2, high wide receiver 3, just with concerns of how banged up he is. He may not finish the game again.
I hope they sit him.
But I like Taylor Gabriel a lot as a high upside wide receiver 3 this week. He's going to avoid Tremaine Johnson because he's hurt already. And he's performed decently well when he's gotten enough target volume, and that may come again this week. Otherwise, the play I really like is Anthony Miller. Every single slot receiver that the Jets have faced this year has scored 12-plus fantasy points in half PPR. All 7 of them.
All 7.
So, Anthony Miller, great start this week if you're looking for a flex play that's a little bit sneaky for you. Jets are decent against tight ends, but Burton has scored in 3 straight games, and he's a number 5 overall scoring tight end, and he's played 1 less game than a lot of teams. You're starting him, even though the matchup isn't amazing. And the defense is a top 3 play against the Jets. Darnold's been averaging getting sacked twice and 3 turnovers a game over his last 3. It's going to be a high floor day and potentially a full-up, blow-up game if Jackson can return a pick 6 for him. All right, that's all I got on the noon games. Let's go ahead and do a beer review.
Beer review.
All right, what did you guys think of Sour Note Brewing's Cherry Gose?
It's got a nice kind of tartness on the front end, actually, and it finishes slightly sour, but it's not as harsh as I thought it was going to be. Cherry's not overwhelming, but it's definitely there. Very, very solid if you're a fan of sours.
Yeah, that's you can't go more on that perfection there. So it's good.
It's great sour. I've had sours that classified themselves as session sours before, and this feels very similar to me in that regard. I think it was Lucy's by Indeed was the one I'm thinking of. So if you're looking for a type of sour that's not nearly as intense as some of the 7-8% alcohol type sours where they're just almost overwhelmingly tart and you have to really like it, this is more of a, hey, I want to try a sour and I'm not sure if I'm into them or not. This would be a great one for that. Or if you just like sours and want something that's not quite as strong as a lot of the Goses or sour ales can be.
I agree with that.
Unlike a lot of beers we have on the show, also the flavor profile is not super complex. So
no,
that is very true.
It's sour and cherry. It is exactly as advertised. There is not layers. There's not multiple things popping in and out. It's just a cherry sour.
Yep.
All right, Hopper, you are up next with the Colts going out to California to play the Raiders in the Coliseum. Colts are favored by 3 on the road. It's a 49.5-point over-under. Are the Colts going to blow them out here in Oakland? Because I think the spread's too low.
I think they do. And the Colts at -3 is way too low. So, anyway, let's start with the Colts. Andrew Luck. He's scored 24 or more points in each of the last 4 weeks. And Oakland's given up 23 or more every week since week 2, so he's a lock to be 23
to heaven.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
What's that?
That looks like a match made in heaven.
It is. So Andrew Luck must start. As for the running backs, Marlon Mack did practice in full, so it looks like he is probably going to go. The Raiders are giving up 22-plus points a week to running backs. Game script is also in Mack's favor. That being said, because the game script's in Mack's favor, i.e. I think the Colts are going to play from ahead, that means it's not necessarily in favor for Nyheim Hines, and him and Wilkins should be under 10 touches against a bad Oakland team. I'm steering clear of the other two, but I do love Marlon Mack this week. As for the receivers, T.Y. Hilton's Luck's favorite target. He deserves a start regardless of matchup. And then for Doyle and Ebron, Doyle is likely to play, but I do still like Ebron more given his performance the last several weeks and the fact that Doyle is coming off an injury. So if he's still ailing a bit, he might be then fully unleash him. So just temper expectations on both guys, though, as this should be a kind of a floor day, not really a game script that's going to need. Anything else on the Colts? And I love their defense.
Yeah, defense
Also,
top 5.
Also, Vinatieri is expected to play.
Yep, Vinatieri. They did not bring in another kicker, so Vinatieri should be playing.
Yep. All right, on to Oakland. Derek Carr, don't do it. Doug Martin, I kind of want to see it first. Jalen Richard, I did say not to get too excited about trading for him or anything, but he is worth a start this week in PPR. He's had 6 or more targets in all of Oakland's losses by a touchdown or more, and I think this will qualify for that. So I expect some, in full PPR especially, some decent points for Jalen Richard. And then for the other receivers, Jordy Nelson and Jared Cook aren't necessarily terrible. Again, they're going to have to throw. They're both fringe volume starts. Cook is the team's most targeted player, while Nelson figures to pick up the pace after the Amari Cooper departure. Wide receivers with double-digit targets have had some success against the Colts as well, with all 3 guys that have met that criteria over 90 yards. So Jordy Nelson could be a decent play. Not a lot of people are thinking about.
And if you have a situation where you have a free roster spot and he's available, or maybe you can move somebody to IR this weekend, I would stash Martavis Bryant and to keep an eye on him too, because he should see an uptick in targets as well.
He should, yes, and I just want to see it from him for. I think Nelson had 2 fewer targets than Amari Cooper, so
yeah. All right, moving to the Packers at the Rams. This is the shootout everyone's been waiting for. Rams favored by 9 in LA, 57 over/under. Dan, what can we expect out of this game?
All right, starting on the Packers. Here's who you're going to start with confidence: Rodgers, Adams, and Jimmy Graham. Rodgers and Adams are obviously clear auto stars here. Jimmy Graham has reached that status as well. Graham is averaging over 8 targets per game, over 4 catches, and 60 yards a game as well. So you got to love that floor. That's for the running backs, those where things get a little bit shitty here. Jones is averaging 5.9 yards per carry this season, but he's only averaging 9 touches a game. And that just speaks to how much we hate Mike McCarthy, because you can't really predict when this is going to change, when this is going to happen. If you play Jones, you got to hope for more. No running back is clearly the pass-catching option, and they all get equal targets or touches generally each week. So I would avoid them just because of that. As for the receivers here, with Geronimo playing, I like him the most this week. He'll be, he get to play on the outside, he gets all the big plays. He should give himself a decent floor. But MVS isn't a bad boom bust play either. Especially if Cobb doesn't go, he's clearly at least earned himself a chance to be playing, as he can produce. But issue is he plays on the outside with Allison as well. So that's that for the Packers. As for the Rams, this one is really easy. Doesn't need a whole lot of deep diving to figure this out. Goff is a great streaming play this week, given the likelihood of a shootout. Gurley is God mode at this point. Both Cooks and Woods are great wide receiver 2s with wide receiver 1 upside without Kupp playing, and this game stretch should be in favor for that. This even makes Josh Reynolds a desperation flex play as for a true boom bust play.
I've got Woods as a wide receiver 1 this week.
Yeah, it's fire up all your Rams, even Josh Reynolds ish.
If they hobble out Kupp on one leg, I'm starting him this week.
Yeah, and I wish the tight end situation can figure itself out, but Goff doesn't really use his tight ends because of his receivers. So, yeah, I'll leave those guys on the bench. And then the Rams are the number 1 ranked DST in the season right now, but I would look elsewhere. This is you're hoping for a floor game. This could be a shootout, and you're praying for they may get some sacks to give you that floor. Think of the Ravens versus the Saints last week, in my opinion.
And that's what you're hoping for.
And that's what you're hoping for. This game could turn lopsided, and there could be a lot of... We've seen what Rodgers can do in comeback mode and not in garbage time, because he doesn't have garbage time.
All right. Last game of the afternoon games before we get to Sunday and Monday night, which is going to be all hopper. 49ers at the Cardinals in Phoenix. 1-point favorite for the road, varying 49ers. 42.5 point over-under on this one. For the 49ers, there's been only one quarterback to break 20 fantasy points so far this year against the Cardinals, and it is C.J. Beathard. But I don't think he repeats the performance in this one. Dan's apparently running errands right now. So I view him as a low quarterback, too, in Superflex formats.
He says Dan have to pee?
Dan grabbed beer and ran upstairs, so I'm not sure what he's doing. In the last 4 starts, though, there's 9 total turnovers for Bethard, 7 picks, 2 fumbles. So I think the risk is too high to even consider him as a streamer, even though he threw up 22 points last time he played the Cardinals. Last time these two teams played, Breida and Juszczyk both had nice games, so I think they're both solid plays here if Breida goes. Mostert's also not a bad desperation flex.
Mozart.
I did it too.
You did it too.
Mostert, if Breida plays, I like him as kind of a desperation flex. He's a low running back too, though, if Breida is out. Garcon is going to miss this game. He's doubtful. And then the player that has fed him most against Cardinals has been slot receivers, including the last time these two teams played in Week 4, where between Garcon and Trent Taylor out of the slot, they targeted that spot 20 times. So Taylor is actually a solid PPR stream here if you're super desperate. Last time he played, he put up 70 yards and a touchdown on 8 targets. And he's going to be the only guy running out of the slot in this matchup. And at this point, Kittle is an elite tight end. You can't even consider benching him no matter what. Cardinals have shut down almost every tight end they've played except for Week 4 against these 49ers, where Kittle went off for 5 for 83. 49ers are a risky defensive start, but Rosen is prone to a lot of mistakes and sacks. I've got him as my defense 7 this week. If you're that desperate, that's where you're sitting.
Yep.
For the Cardinals, Rosen is the only quarterback to throw for less than 200 yards and less than 2 touchdowns against the 49ers this season. Find another option at quarterback. David Johnson gave you 70 yards and a touchdown last time two touchdowns last time these two teams played. Hopefully, with Leftwich coming in, that'll boost him and get him even more usage in the passing game. Maybe get him up to 100 total yards in a plus matchup here. But he is still a back end running back 1 just based on his touchdown efficiency alone. And then the last time these two teams played, Kirk scored a 75-yard touchdown in the first play, and then after that, wide receivers combined for a total of 68 yards for the entire rest of the game. So I'm avoiding all Cardinals wide receivers until we see what Leftwich can do to this passing game. But as of now, avoid. And then RSJ can't be trusted. His snap percentage has dropped every single week since Gresham came back. Look elsewhere for tight end help. And then the last time the Cardinals played these teams, played the 49ers, they scored over 20-plus fantasy points for you with I believe 2 defensive touchdowns. Should be started here again. They're my defense 6. On to Sunday night, where I think the over-under needs to go up because it sounds like half the Vikings defense might be missing. We got the Saints coming to Minnesota. It's an even spread, 52-point over-under.
All right, let's start with the Saints. Drew Brees is back in 1 in this one. The Vikings have been just okay against quarterbacks this season. They are giving up the 9th most points. However, just a little caveat here. Quarterbacks not named Josh Allen, Josh Rosen, or Sam Darnold have gone for 329 yards a game, 9 touchdowns, and just 3 interceptions. Now, granted, 5 of those 9 touchdowns were Jared Blow in Week 1. So take that for what you will. I don't hate Brees this week is kind of the bow on that.
He's my start of the week. I love me some Drew Brees.
He cut out. It was 3 ints were all Jimmy G.
Yep, they were. And then for the running backs, Alvin Kamara, Mark Ingram. Minnesota's been very good against the run. They've allowed just 1 rush touchdown, and only Todd Gurley, the third, has gone over 60 yards. Not the second or the first, though. Ingram is a sit yet again this week. However, Linval Joseph may not play, and if he does not play, that changes that perspective a little bit. It's a bump up for Ingram if Joseph does not go.
Bump up for both.
What's that?
It's a bump up for both.
Because receiving backs have done a bit better, averaging 55 yards a game. Ivory, Cannon, and Gurley all had solid games, and Smallwood managed at 44 and a touchdown. So Alvin Kamara, I actually do not hate this week. I think he's a pretty safe floor play, probably in that running back 2 area, because receiving backs have been able to do it against Minnesota. But actual between the tackles runners have struggled. But if Linval Joseph misses in the check-in Sunday for this, that's going to change that perspective a decent amount.
Hopefully we'll have that information by Sunday morning to keep you guys properly informed.
Yeah, hopefully. As for the wide receivers, Michael Thomas, Traquan Smith, Cam Meredith. For Michael Thomas, possibly no Xavier Rhodes. Still in question. Thomas, if Rhodes doesn't go, even if Rhodes does go, banged up, not necessarily been great this year. So I do love Michael Thomas this week. As for the other 2, everybody wants it to be Traquan Smith, but the fact is that neither him nor Cam Meredith have seen substantial target volume. I think it's like 13 and 10 is the split there. And both have been productive with what they've been given. I think Cam Meredith actually has 9 receptions on 10 targets. So I'm not willing to say definitively start one over the other with Ginn's absence. I think that figures to help Alvin Kamara and maybe Ben Watson a little bit more. But I want to see how that plays out before I'm running either of them out there. So Smith and Meredith mirror dart throws for me this week. As much as I want it to be Traquan, there's no guarantee that it is. And then Ben Watson, Josh Hill. Watson's Brees, their most targeted player, behind Thomas and Kamara. Minnesota's given up over 90 yards 3 times to tight ends, as well as a 69-yard 5-catch performance and a 4 for 42 and 1 performance to Chris Herndon last week. So I do like Ben Watson a lot this week as well. So,
all right, and that wraps up that game. Or no, I don't see Vikings.
I already talked. Oh, right, Vikings. I forgot to do that. Yeah, they're a team. No, I like.
And we just lost all of it.
We lost everything.
Did you?
Yeah, you just cut out immediately.
Oh, that's good. So the world doesn't want me to talk about the Vikings.
Apparently not.
I'll go ahead and do it again, though. Kirk Cousins, you're going to start him. Saints have not been exactly great in their passing defense, although they have been slightly better the last couple of weeks. Latavius Murray, we've talked about at length. Don't run him out there. As far as your wide receivers go, Thielen, there's no way you're not starting him. And Diggs, I don't really hate. They did add Eli Apple. We'll see how that pans out. But, again, pass defense has been suspect. This should be a shootout. So I think Stephon Diggs does get for Kyle Rudolph. I don't necessarily hate him, especially given the state of tight ends. But
you don't feel great about him.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
the Kyle Rudolph is like, you probably have to start him, but that's because that's basically, if a tight end is known, you're probably
Somebody
playing
dropped
him.
Jack Doyle, so I picked him up and I'm playing him instead.
All right.
All right. All right, that all you got on that
Shots.
game?
Yeah, that was the Vikings shooting from the hip, and I think that was pretty spot on.
Yep.
All right. Well, let's wrap it up here with Monday night, what should be a snooze fest of a Monday night game. So, Hopper, I'm glad you're the one who has to watch it. Patriots versus the Bills in Buffalo. Patriots favored by 14 on the road with a 44-point over-under.
Tom Brady's a must start. James White is a must start. Kendrick Barner's an emergency play. Julian Edelman and Josh Gordon is where I'm going to give you the heavy analysis. Edelman's had a touchdown each of the last 2 weeks. He's been over 7 targets every week since his return, which makes him the guy I'm looking to start. Josh Gordon, while he's been trending up, I see no reason why the Pats need to throw a ton as they have effectively. So, even if Gronk doesn't play, not loving Gordon this week because I don't think the game script dictates him having to have a ton of work. I think that it's going to be Edelman, and with Gordon, you're hoping for something big. And Gronk, if he plays, you have to start him. If he doesn't play, then I'd probably avoid that also. It's pretty much Edelman, White, Brady. And it's not because this isn't a good matchup. It's because And then onto the Bills. LaShawn McCoy is the only thing here that matters, really. Cohen and Hunt have shredded the Pats the last 2 weeks. They went for over 200 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns combined. McCoy should be able to exploit this, assuming his brains aren't still scrambled. And then Kelvin Benjamin, if you're desperate. Everything else, just stay away from.
That was Kelvin Benjamin, if you're really desperate, was what that was?
Yep.
Okay. All right, well, that wraps us up for Monday night there. Unfortunately, switching platforms did not appear to help the cutout issue, so we will keep investigating other causes. Sorry for the continued technical issues in that regard. We'll keep trying to get that fixed.
We're working on it. There has not been a week since I've gotten down here where we haven't tried something different. So,
Yep.
So we'll keep checking that out. I'm not sure what we can try next, but we'll come up with something here to try.
I
this
already
week.
know what I'm going to try next.
All right.
So.
Well, thank you so much for listening, guys. We are Beer Fueled Fantasy Football. Hope you enjoyed the episode. Shout out to Sour Out Brewing. First time we've had them on the show, so it was a pleasure getting a Gose on. We don't have a ton of them. If you want to follow the show, it is at Beer Fueled FF on Twitter, Instagram, and Untapped. You can see the awesome can art for the brewery there. Get Hopper's review of the beer on Untapped. And we'll drop the episode here on iTunes and everywhere else you guys can get your platforms very, very shortly. If you can drop a review on iTunes, like or comment on the YouTube videos, we appreciate all of that. Coming from St. Louis, the Invisible Man himself is Christopher Hopper.
At Hot BFF with 2 Ps.
To my right, Daniel Thury, who had to run beer to the fridge.
At the BFF, it needs to be cold.
It needs to be cold. And I am Nick Sparts. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you at 7:45 in the morning Sunday
Fuck me.
Central Time to answer all your start sit questions and drop any more news that's dropped before the London game kicks off. I'll be in my throwback Fred Taylor jersey, drinking coffee and ready to roll. We'll catch you guys next time on Beer Fueled Fantasy Football.
Peace.
See ya.
Later.